Good morning and welcome to the UpSkill Works Forum, where we engage business leaders, education and community leaders, policymakers, and leading thinkers on key workforce issues our region and nation face. I'm Peter Beard and lead the Greater Houston Partnership's UpSkill Houston initiative, and a new initiative that you will hear about very shortly. UpSkill Houston serves as a backbone to bring together employers and business leaders, educational leadership, community-based organizations, and the public workforce system to strengthen the talent pipelines our region's employers need and to help Houstonians connect to good jobs that increase opportunity and prosperity. On Monday, we celebrated Labor Day, an important opportunity to acknowledge the tremendous contributions workers make to the Houston region's strength, prosperity, and well-being. Today is the final session of our special two-day Labor Day UpSkill Works Forum series focused on how the pandemic has impacted our region's workers and how we can help smooth the way for our neighbors who are striving to get back on track. And now just a few housekeeping details. All attendees are muted and videos are turned off for the entirety of the webinar. Please do not use the chat function for Q&A. We will not be moderating that for questions. The chat function should be used to connect with our production team if you are having any issues. If you have any questions or comments during the webinar, please use the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. We'll be moderating this throughout the webinar and for today's session. If you have any questions or comments, you should use the Q&A tab. I'd also like to acknowledge the sponsors of the 2020 UpSkill Works Forum series. The Greater Houston Partnership and UpSkill Houston would like to thank our forum sponsors, Accenture, Silver Eagle, Winstead, and then HCA Houston Healthcare, Houston Community College, Lone Star College, Mustang Cat, San Jacinto College, Merrick and Dow, and Western Governors University, Texas. Thank you to our sponsors for your support of our UpSkill Works Forum series. I'd like to now introduce Mark Guthrie, who will be introducing our session today that is focused on pathways to better opportunity, how Houston's employers can support workforce recovery. Mark is a shareholder at Winstead, which is a national business law firm with nearly 300 attorneys who serve as trusted advisors to public and private companies. In his day job at Winstead, Mark focuses on complex commercial litigation and arbitration, including construction-related transactions and disputes, insurance and reinsurance claims, and disputes and trade secrets and litigation. Mark also serves as chair of the board of directors of the Gulf Coast Workforce Board, which helps employers meet their human resource needs and individuals' good careers so both can compete in a global economy. The region's workforce board is business-led and community-focused and includes representatives from the private sector, education, organized labor, and community-based organizations. The board sets the strategic direction for the regional workforce system and guides the area's workforce agenda. Mark also provides leadership at the state and national levels by serving on the boards of the Texas Association of Workforce Boards and the National Association of Workforce Boards. Welcome, Mark. It's a pleasure to have you here today, and the partnership appreciates your leadership in the region and Winstead support for this UpSkill Works Forum series.
Thank you, Peter, and good morning, everybody. Winstead is proud to partner with UpSkill Houston and support these sessions on important workforce topics in the Houston region. I'm also pleased to share with you that Winstead has supported my own volunteer efforts in local, state, and national workforce development for almost 25 years now. In our session today, we will be discussing some critical issues and challenges the Houston region is facing as businesses continue recovering from the pandemic and seek to hire and retain the skilled talent they need to grow and prosper. 2 weeks ago, in the first session of this series, we heard from Jen Schaefer about the insights she gathered through interviews with 28 individuals who are looking for better career opportunities as a result of the pandemic. The personas she developed highlight the challenges and opportunities we have as a region to support a more inclusive recovery. On a personal note, one of those personas really struck me, Raymond. Raymond is a lot like my father was 30 years ago. He was in his late 50s in 1987, and he lost his job in management with a company that he was employed by for 18 or 19 years. He never could figure out what to do to get back into the workforce in a relatively similar position. And he never recovered. The story did not end well. I hope our efforts here change the narratives and outcomes for people like Raymond and the rest of the personas. So today, we will hear from key business leaders in Houston about the challenges we face and how we can work together to support people finding pathways back to the workforce and career opportunities. We also will hear from employers who are interested in recruiting and developing people impacted and displaced by the pandemic. But make no mistake, once this pandemic is gone, these efforts will be important still and will leave us lasting lessons that will help guide us in the future. Today's session will open with a conversation between Matt Morris, who is the former CEO of Stewart Title and serves on the executive committee of the Greater Houston Partnership. Chase Robinson, who is the former CEO of Avalon Advisors and serves on the board of directors of Kids Meals. And Louise Wiggins, who is a managing director and partner at the Boston Consulting Group and serves on the executive committee of UpSkill Houston. Matt and Chase will also engage in a discussion with 4 employers who are committed to finding new ways to engage and recruit individuals who have been impacted and displaced by the pandemic. We will hear from key leaders from HCA Houston Healthcare, Mustang Cat, Primary Services, and Silver Eagle Distributors Houston. This will be a great and insightful conversation, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about how we can work together to ensure employers in our region have the skilled talent they need and how we can upskill people who are looking for better career opportunities after the pandemic and beyond. Matt, Chase, Louise, welcome to today's UpSkill Works Forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. We are appreciative of the introduction, and Louise, Chase, and I just want to start off by thanking everyone that is here. We have employers and educators and community partners. All of you are and have been doing tremendous work already around the workforce recovery, and we're just grateful that you would join us this morning. As we kick off, and we'll do some introductions, but first we were just going to start off and talk about maybe why we're here or why we're interested. And I will first admit that I'm here because I see work as a good thing. I see work as something that God created at the beginning of time, not only as a necessity, but as something that gives purpose and dignity. And I think work not only provides for needs, which we're all aware of, but also provides freedom and opportunity. And I think, personally, I've been involved with various companies and organizations. As Mark mentioned, most recently was CEO at Stewart Title, but again, serve on numerous boards right now, for-profit, nonprofit, and all of these organizations have great purposes and provide great services. But really, when I look back and I look at the organizations and why I'm involved is because I really enjoy how organizations bring people together to achieve big goals, to surround people with objectives larger than themselves, and how they elevate employees and families. And so that's part of the reason why we're here. I think when we looked at the pandemic, my first concern was, obviously we all go to the health concerns, but the concern we're now facing is work, which I've already admitted I think is a good thing for people, for all types of different areas. we saw that that's changing significantly. Those of you that are on this call are already well aware that we've got a crisis related to people not being able to find work. And we also have probably half of you on this call are with employers that are not able to find qualified candidates. And so the reasons for that, as we dig into this, seem to be as diverse and as debated as the people that are actually affected. But they raise problems that we think are best addressed together. And that's really why we're here today. We've got variants, vaccines, and child and elder care, automated hiring system, resume gaps, significantly older workforce that we've talked about. And so in numerous conversations that we talk about these issues, what we realize quickly is that Houston has an incredible network of employers, educators, and community partners with already tremendous knowledge around the topic. And so the best way to add value, as we thought about from a Greater Houston Partnership, talking with Peter and from ourselves, is really not to recreate, but to really try to accelerate and coordinate and help equip our city during this transition. And so we've created Back on Track, which we'll talk about, but it's really this catalytic effort to boost what you all are currently working on right now. And we'll talk more about that. But first, spoken too long, let me introduce one of the first people started talking to about this effort was Chief Robeson, and a different organization that we're involved in together. And but let me introduce Chase first and allow him to tell you a little bit about why he got involved.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Yeah, so for me, the inspiration was really a couple of things. It was, as Matt and I were talking about a number of topics, we were just really kind of looking around and seeing what was happening to the city of Houston from an employment standpoint. But just as importantly, I'm involved with another organization that feeds preschool age kids, and the things that we were seeing on the ground with a number of daily meals that were being not only delivered, but kind of people showing up at our doorstep looking for meals. And we realized there was a deeper, more fundamental need in our city that originates with job loss, but really is impacting the city in a number of ways. And, we saw our meal counts go from 4,000 a day to almost double. And that number has continued to stay extremely elevated, even a year and a half later. So we engaged with the Greater Houston Partnership, Peter and his UpSkill organization, around what we could do collectively to address the situation. And the unique position that the Greater Houston Partnership and the UpSkill organization is in is to create that connectivity that, that is really bringing together, as Matt said, a lot of the pieces that are already underway in each of our different silos around the city, whether it's in community service or education or employment. It's really the partnership brings the opportunity to really bring those pieces together and create connectivity around a situation that, while we hope it's temporal, will result in a longer term creation of pathways for people looking for employment to employers who are seeking to bring people into the job market. So that's really how this conversation started. We're really excited to introduce this today and tell you a little bit more about it later in the session, but we're excited about the opportunity that each of you bring to the picture today as part of this conversation.
Thanks, Chase. And obviously, last but not least, want to introduce Louise very quickly. I think when we were talking with Peter and assessing what this team looks like, we realized more resources are beneficial. And Louise and her team at BCG responded quickly and obviously have tremendous support for GHP and this group in the past, and has been really enjoyed to work with as we find additional information. But Louise, maybe talk about yourself and,
Sure.
and BCG's involvement a little bit.
No, sure. Thanks everybody for joining, and thank you, Matt and Chase, for the passion and enthusiasm you've brought to Back on Track, Houston Back on Track. So in terms of my involvement, I first became involved with UpSkill about 2.5 years ago, really focused on what I would say is the long-term talent gaps in the city, the supply and demand mismatches in terms of what we needed from a hiring perspective. Over the past 1.5 years now, obviously things have been dramatically exacerbated in the city. And so when I saw the need and started to talk with Peter and the partnership, it really was around how do we fix the short-term gaps. I do all my work in retail and restaurants and hospitality. So you can imagine March and April of 2020 were pretty dire circumstances. Now, obviously, business is booming back, and it's how do we actually find the right talent, the right qualified individuals to step back into those roles after 1.5 years off. So very excited about this work, very excited about taking an employer-led approach and the conversations that we're going to have with the employers today, because I think that's been so critical to help make sure we have a view of what are the jobs and what are the needs of the employers in our city.
Yep. Thank you very much. Well, with that intro, let's dig into the issue itself, and we'll pull up some slides for you to look at. But the first one really just identifies the problem that we first realized, and you'll see that this pandemic and the job losses that were created were significant. We estimate 230,000 plus people that were employed pre-COVID are not employed now. If you look at the recession for Houston, this is at the height of what we saw in COVID, 361,000 people unemployed. You look at the oil bust, which I think a lot of us look at as, it can't get any worse than that. But it pales in comparison, again, looking at Great Depression, 80s oil bust, and this COVID recession. So this is significant. I think we all realize that and feel it, but sometimes it's helpful just to see the numbers on the screen and to recognize the problem that we're facing. But we all knew, we'll get past the pandemic and we'll start recovering. And so that's what a lot of what the data and analysis we've been looking at more recently is just, okay, are we coming out of this? And this next slide just points to a little bit of the disconnect. We see a lot of those jobs are recovered. And if you look at the US graph there on the left, you see about 75% of those jobs have been recovered. But in Houston, to date, a little less than 58% of those jobs have been recovered. And so this raises a lot of other questions, which you may know the answers to, and we can spend some time with the data. A lot of it is anecdotal evidence, but we obviously look at the oil and gas industry, what impacts that has on Houston. And Houston, we also, talk about the labor market. There was just a survey this week where Houston ranks number 9 on worker, burnout. So, you have a lot of issues of why Houston may not be recovering as rapidly as other places in the country. Go to this next slide as well, which is just another illustration. Hopefully this slide doesn't get to Dallas, but I think usually as a native Houstonian myself, I always talk about how much better we are than other places in the state. And so this graph does not make me happy seeing Dallas on the other side of the scale. But again, looking at our job recovery, slightly less than 58%. Then the opposite side of that, again, Denver, 93%, and even Dallas, close to 90%. So, we look at what is specific to Houston, and that's really why this collective effort is essential to come together to understand why Houston is not recovering and what we can do to enable the recovery. And, a lot of data we don't have specifically on Houston, and I'll just go to this next chart here just to set up this idea that that the graphs and the economics aren't really making sense. There's a disconnect between workers and employers right now. You all are seeing this, you all are feeling this. We have 10.1 million job openings nationally, greatly exceeding the 6.7 million hires. Last Friday's job report, I'm sure you're familiar with, jobs rose by 235,000. That's obviously well short of the 720,000 that were expected. And then you have issues like, 3.7 million people quit their jobs in June. I think it was 4 million people quit their jobs the month before. And so again, increasing job openings, increasing number of people looking for hires, and we have more people leaving their jobs than ever before. So these are significant issues without easy solutions. We see employment benefits in Houston were over a while ago, but obviously on Monday of this week over for an additional 7.5 million people in the country. So again, seeing these aren't layoffs, but people leaving the workforce, employment benefits coming over. And then I just kind of close with as these employment benefits were terminated, Biden's chief of staff said Monday, his quote is, "We think the jobs are there," which we would agree. We think that states have the resources they need to move people from unemployment to employment. And so my quest really to all of us is that's the challenge that we have to ourselves, right? Is how do we as a state, how do we as a city identify these issues and work together to get Houston back on track, to get people back in the workforce, not just for job, but even as I open this section, how do we get people employed in the workforce that empowers them and the employers on their collective mission? And so Lou's is going to walk through a little bit more of the data, and we'll talk specifically on back on track and how we're kind of positioning this work for this next year here. So Lou's, maybe walk us through these next slides.
Thanks, Matt. And really, when I look at that data and I reflect on where we were 3 years ago as a city and where we are now, I think we had some of these issues 3 years ago, right? We had certain industries where we knew we had critical shortages and supply. Nursing comes to mind, for example, relative to the job demands. But now there's more needs, right? There's also more unemployment. And what we've really been spending time with, and as Mark alluded to in his intro, is understanding what is the need, what drives this gap, and the dichotomy in the data between the unemployed and then the number, of job openings and hirings and needs of our employers on the phone. And so the Greater Houston Partnership and UpSkill, spent some time this summer really understanding and speaking to unemployed members of our community to understand what are the drivers, what do they need. Hopefully many of you joined our session 2 weeks ago to better understand Selena, Connie, Fern, and Raymond. But I'll quickly just share a couple of things that we learned as we went through this exercise and how we think about some of the themes of why do we have this gap and what can we do about it. So Selena, for example, was a great example of someone who had a mammography license or certification, but was working at sort of an underqualified role as an X-ray tech. And she attributed that really to a lack of experience. And with this is an issue that we see broadly. There's a study that came out from Harvard Business School just last week around there could be 10 million more workers employed if we, and Matt, you alluded to this, we relied less on sort of automated screening criteria, right? Where we're using automated criteria to look at resumes that unfortunately may weed out job gaps, time off, different levels of experience or sort of unique backgrounds that may make Selena a good candidate for a variety of roles, but that were part of why she was sort of screened out in the process. And so if we think about that, something that we're looking to do with employers is how do we help open up the aperture of what we look at in terms of experience, and how do we help people like Selena also better market their skills as they think about job transitions. Connie is a great example of someone, we call Connie Mayday Mom, who left the workforce to raise her kids, is in a role where she's not happy, not fulfilled, to your point, Matt. And it's really around how do we get her to that sort of next wage. We have so many people in the city that are sort of underemployed, we would say. They're in roles, they are paid, they're not hitting our unemployment numbers, but they're underemployed relative to where they could be. Fern, Persona 3, was a great example of someone who has gone through life's ups and downs and has had a number of downs, I would say, and in that case is struggling to get back on their feet. And so be it a car accident, be it mental health issues, how do we help people get back on their feet and feel more stable to be able to actually pursue job opportunities? And then finally, Persona 4, and Mark talked about Raymond a lot, so I won't talk about him too much, but this is someone who was employed steadily for 20 years in the energy industry, right? And given the changes over the past year and a half, unfortunately was laid off. And how do we help, particularly in this energy transition, where people may not go back into the roles that they were in prior, find new roles and help navigate that. And so when we did this persona work, I think what it really articulated was the number of challenges affecting the unemployed in Houston. It can be confidence, it can be mental health issues, it can be the need for guidance and structure. One that's talked about a lot is the need for childcare, right, over the past 18 months. But it's a number of different challenges that we need to solve for. And how do we help bridge the gap so that these individuals are employer ready is really what Houston Back on Track is focused on, and what we're going to talk about today. I will share just a little bit of data that highlights, I think, how critical the problem is in Houston specifically, given our, increasingly diverse population. So this is US data, although the statistics would be, very much the same if we were to cut it specific to Houston, that looks at unemployment overall and then unemployment cut by ethnicity. And you can quickly see Black and Hispanic unemployment has significantly increased, more so than for whites here, over the past year. And so year and a half. And so when you think about that, when you think about our city in particular, where the white population makes up less than a third of the total city population today, we need to think about how do we better treat our diverse and drive inclusivity in the workforce to better employ our majority minority population. If you flip to the next page, when we cut this by gender, I think a lot has been said about the pandemic and its effect on women in the workforce and the number of women that have dropped out of the workforce. This data speaks for itself, right? Female unemployment rate has increased about 2x relative to men. And so how do we provide childcare? How do we break down perceptions of that job just no longer is, quote, worth it? How do we find ways to encourage women back in the workforce and make it a more sustainable, flexible career model for them? And then finally, when we cut it by educational attainment, we see the same thing. When you look at where unemployment has been most acute over the past 18 months, it really focuses on what we would call lower skill and or middle skill roles. So skills requiring less than a college degree, where we see the most stark increases in unemployment or total unemployment. And so that's really where we've been focused is how do we change some of the numbers on the middle to left side of the page? What are the roles? What are the opportunities that we can help encourage individuals to achieve a living wage and to better, contribute and to the Houston economy, but also to find fulfillment in their work. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chase, who's going to talk a little bit about what we're doing now that we have a sense of sort of the problem that we're facing.
Thanks, Louise. So if we flip to the next slide, I think the title kind of says it all, and that we're Houston Back on Track is really about coordinating and aligning the resources and partners that are already doing good work around the city of Houston today. As Louise mentioned earlier in our conversation, it's really about connecting the dots, and the dots here are needs from the employers for qualified employees and needs of displaced workers for job opportunities and understanding pathways to those jobs. So as Louise mentioned earlier in the conversation, we started our analysis with identifying where the employment opportunities were. So on the right side of the page, that's where we started to identify actual jobs that we need to fill today, and industry groups where those jobs exist. And then we kind of worked our way back into what are the specific roles, what are the specific requirements for those roles, in an effort to identify where, and then worked our way back through the educators and community organizations to find displaced workers who are looking for opportunities. And so as we think about the process going forward, so we kind of work back the other way from the displaced workers. So we're spending a lot of time around through our community organizations and educators and identifying these displaced workers in these groups. We're doing a lot of community outreach. We're going to be expending a fair amount of effort on public relations, trying to get to those workers in both a kind of electronic format, but also a standard format. So for example, we've got a community partner who's out delivering meals into the neighborhoods. We're going to be putting flyers out in the neighborhoods for people who are looking for employment. But from there, it's really about engagement. How do you draw potential workers into the workforce? How do you paint a picture of what the opportunities are that's attractive, that's interesting to them, to get them to engage with our community partners with a career coach to help paint the pathway further? What is the job opportunity? What is it going to take in terms of education and training? And what is my career pathway from there? So we're working all the way through the four components here to help people be prepared to sit in front of an employer about a job opportunity. And so we're working on coaching, we're working on training, we're working on wraparound services to help people be prepared for that job interview. And so again, this is, you've heard a lot about connectivity and a lot about connections. That's what we're doing here, is trying to marshal all the resources and good work that's underway already to paint the pathway to a career opportunity. So if you flip to the next page, you can see where with the work that we've done, these are the three industries that we're focusing on for this initial phase: healthcare, transportation, warehousing and manufacturing, and customer support. And you can see the roles kind of within each of these groupings that we're focused on and where jobs actually exist. And again, underneath that, you can see the original 5 partners that have come together to help us understand the needs and then work with our community partners and education partners to paint the picture for how people can engage in that pathway to a job. As we look forward into the next phase of the work, which will be starting here pretty soon, we're looking at other areas like information technology. We're seeking to address the energy transition effort that's underway in Houston, and additional work around customer support and sales, and then other roles or other opportunity as employers come forward and express interest in engaging in what we're doing. Next page, really around the process. We're in the launch phase. We're focused on getting this right. So as we've already talked about, we've got 5 employers who are involved in helping us define the pathway. We're working with community partners to engage displaced workers looking for work. And we're trying to get this right first before we launch into the growth phase. And we're welcoming, as part of this next phase, which is really kind of starting towards the end of the month, we're really looking for other employers who are interested in stepping forward and engaging what we're doing. This is a 18 to 24 month timeframe. We're really seizing on an opportunity and a dislocation that was created by COVID to really build connectivity that may not have existed before in the way that we think that it needs to exist to be effective here, with the idea that connectivity will remain well beyond our efforts around this one initiative. So this is a partner effort. This takes all 4 groups to engage around this to be effective. And we're looking for people to engage in what we're doing. We do have a website, which is part of our PR effort and getting the word out about what we're doing. It's HoustonBackOnTrack.org. We encourage each of you to go take a look at that. Pass the word around as well to other either community partners, education partners, or employers who are looking to fill meaningful roles. And we're looking for people to engage. So go check that out. There's a way to reach out to us through that website and indicate your interest in engaging with us.
Thanks, Chase. Yeah, I think as we've discussed, we're trying to hit this from both ends, but obviously from the Houston partnership side, and I think in communicating with a lot of the community partners, having known jobs of what's out there and being able to look at that as an opportunity is a great incentive to get people engaged back in the workforce. If they can see a path toward employment, that's vital and crucial. And so we're excited to move to this next phase of the presentation today. And we've probably gone a little too long, but we do want to engage the employers so that you all can hear from them a little bit what's going on. So I think with that, we'll pass it back to Peter.
So thanks, Matt, Chase, and Louise. We really appreciate the leadership you're providing. This whole idea that we're trying to create this line of sight to employers is really important. And so we're going to make a quick transition to some of the conversations between Chase and Matt and some of our initial employer partners who we really appreciate. Please enjoy this short video about UpSkill Houston's work, and we'll be back with you in about a minute. Thank you.
Organizations are trying to crack the code on the future of work. What does it look like? Where is the talent going to come from? UpSkill Houston brings organizations, education, community partners all to the table to solve it together, to have that dialogue in a very specific way that will not only benefit their organization, but also benefits Houston and the region. UpSkill is a unique framework and platform for bringing people to the table to actually have the conversation around how are we going to develop the future workforce. It's a group that is actually driving outcomes. I'm Linda Aldred. I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer at Texas Children's Hospital. What are you up for?
Good morning again. I'm Chase Robinson, and I'd like to introduce three people who are key employer partners as we launch Houston Back on Track. First, I'd like to welcome Regina Mellinger. Regina is the CEO of Primary Services, which is a recruiting and staffing firm. As we will hear, Regina is committed to helping her staff, helping staffing clients and job seekers to succeed. I'd also like to welcome Mindy Hart and Oscar Gracia, who are with HCA Houston Healthcare, which has 13 hospital locations across the Houston region and serves more than 1 million patients a year. Mindy serves as the division manager for talent acquisition, and Oscar is the director of talent acquisition for the Gulf Coast division. As we will hear, HCA Houston Healthcare is using innovative approaches to recruit and develop its talent. So I'd like to welcome each of you to our discussion today. Thank you very much for being here. I'd like to, if we could just start real quick before we get into questions, I'd like to just ask quickly, just in terms of scale or in terms of the employee base that you're able to affect in Houston. Love to hear either directly or indirectly kind of what your employee base looks like or the number of employees that you're affecting around the city of Houston, just to give people a sense for the scale that you guys are talking about and influence here in Houston.
I'd be more than happy to start off, if that's okay. Again, my name is Oscar Gracia. I'm the Director of Talent Acquisition for HCA and in the Gulf Coast Division, which comprises the Houston market and also in South Texas. But as far as the scope in our region, we have a total of 21,000 employees, 8,000 of those being registered nurses. We have 13 hospitals in the Houston area, and we're aggressively targeting anyone we can get, especially during this time, to try to come and fulfill some of our staffing needs.
Great. Regina, any comments before I move to questions?
Yes, you know, I'm the founder of Primary Services, and I've been helping people find jobs for 40 years. Primary's been around 33 years. We've placed almost 70,000 people on jobs. Currently, we have about 700 people working, and we have 5,000 active job openings.
Okay, thank you. So the first couple of questions really are focused around the current hiring environment. And there's really a couple that are kind of wrapped together here. So I'd love to explore with each of you the current challenges that you're facing as you recruit and hire talent and what has changed as a result of the pandemic. The second one is really around your specific hiring needs and what you're seeing in your applicant pool today, post-COVID. And feel free to elaborate on any of those. Why don't we start with Regina, if you don't mind, and just kind of let's start from there and talk about what you're facing, what you're seeing as it relates, you know, after COVID or as part of COVID.
Well, what I think is great is this whole group kind of has, you know, one theme. I know we started out with Mark saying that work is a gift, and moved to Louise, and she was saying that we've always had this problem. And I would agree with her that this probably just brought the problem up further. It's a problem we've had for a long time with the underemployed. And then Chase, what you were saying around getting people to like paint the picture of where do we go. For the employees and for the employers. I've been doing this for a very long time, and it really, the pandemic really shook the very, root of what we do. So what we do is the same. It's just, being more thoughtful and mindful of exactly what we're doing. The long-term success of our employers along with our employees has always been there, but leaning in further to that and listening, our employers need long-term success, our individuals need long-term success. And how do we support those from the moment we're looking to when they get on a job, and also for their long-term, like where are they going, like paint the oasis. I think family structure probably, has something to do with the underemployed. I think of the gift of my family, whether it be, emotional, financial, or educational support, that a lot of these people do not have it. So I'm really excited about a group of people getting together and supporting the individual once they get on the job. There are things that, you know, it's hard to really know unless you hear what goes on. If one thing goes wrong with a lot of us professionals, we have a support system to pull us through. In many of these cases, whether it could be internet, it could be illness or mental, you know, challenges, people will just leave the job. So this is a whole group that really needs support, and I'm really excited about it. It's kind of like, you know, I'm also a mom, and it reminds me of, you know, what would you do if this was your family? And I think it's, you know, I think a lot of these things intrinsically, the people that are here want to help, you know, people to find jobs. I also, you know, want to really commend the people that are out there looking to fill these jobs, because it's very stressful on them, because they're hearing things, they're seeing things, people are pulling off of jobs. And so it's, you know, it's really a very thoughtful, you know, time for people that are, you know, helping talent acquisition teams that are really trying to find the great people for jobs. We have to really support them and give them the long-term vision and support of, you know, what's really our value system and why are we doing this. I think I've talked too long, but we do have a lot of customer service positions that are available. We can transition people from retail or other positions if, you know, if they've got the motivation and the right fit. A lot of our people can transition from there to, we have a lot of renewables right now that offer a lot of job growth and also long-term employment, where someone can leave retail, become customer service, become a supervisor or a manager of credit. So supporting people through that is very rewarding and also causes long-term retention.
Oscar, Mindy?
All right. Yes, great. I'd love to add to that, and thank you, Regina, for all that. But the biggest challenge for us is that we have a very limited candidate pool currently. So you have I believe on your slide, it said 360,000 jobs lost during this pandemic, and we're feeling the brunt of that right now. So with the skilled workers, by skilled, I mean the registered nurses, the surgical techs, and so forth, that go to school, get the certification, they're finding themselves in a position right now to, a lot of them are leaving the workforce for one reason or another. Could be because of family, it could be because of the environment, and also it could be because there's other greater opportunities out there. So whatever the reason is, we're finding ourselves in a staffing need crunch to where we do not have a large enough candidate pool to be able to fill most of the positions that we have. That, coupled with the fact that we're in the most competitive healthcare market in the country, and that the majority of our jobs require specialized training in certain skills. So I piggyback on what Regina was saying about trying to identify those entry-level positions, and definitely I am 100% supportive of what UpSkills is trying to do, and trying to introduce entry-level positions for those that do not have the training. And we got ahead of this a few months ago last fall when we partnered with local ISD, and we were able to mentor them once a month through the entire school year. And then we opened up the door for all those brand new high school graduates to come into the workforce as HCA employees and be trained through our formal training program to become PCTs. So this meant a lot for the students, but I will tell you, when we were there, we put together a signing day. When we were there and saw the faces on those parents, those were the most satisfied people in that room, because they saw their child, their soon-to-be graduate, instead of having nowhere to go, especially during this environment, many doors were opened to them by HCA, welcoming them into this transition to where they were able to join our workforce and there enjoy tuition at a rate of $52.50 a year, which was even, a prouder moment for them, knowing that they didn't have to pay the college education. And then this helped us develop future skilled workers in those specialized areas like OR technicians and registered nurses. We have several of those case histories or case studies right now to where we had an entry-level employee begin with us, whether it be in housekeeping or whether it was in food and nutrition, that are now directors of nursing units in HCA Houston Healthcare. So those are very great stories, and we're opening the doors to many more. And I'll tell you what, we're so thrilled to be part of this partnership with your organization. Mindy, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just to go ahead and speak to, our training program that we implemented, our Star Tech program, which really reaches out to those individuals coming out of high school who have zero experience, for us to really give them that training and help to develop that skill set within them. I think back to the slide that you guys showed, riddle me this, right? And it showed how many positions are out there, but then the lower number of individuals who are actually quote unquote qualified to get into those roles. And this event here is actually going to help employers recognize that we have to acknowledge that the demand, right, is so much higher than what the supply of qualified individuals are out there. So employers have to acknowledge that. We have to identify the roles within our organizations that we can actually develop training programs for, and then reach out to those individuals out in the market who are not qualified, who do not have that skill set, and actually provide that training for them to then be able to bring them into the fold of our organizations. So yes, our Star Tech program here within HCA Houston Healthcare is one of those programs that we're extremely proud of. We're able to address that need of unemployment within our market. And we're just excited to continue to develop more programs such as that to help increase employment and decrease unemployment.
One of the things that we've been hearing consistently through our conversations with our partners is just the extreme interest in connectivity from our community partners, education partners to the employers. I know connectivity exists today, but just that recurring connection to employers to actual jobs is a recurring theme that we're hearing. So, and that's that's two ways. And you guys just mentioned it, Oscar. You mentioned barriers to people getting back to work, and Mindy, you just mentioned connectivity as well. So the next question is around soft skills. So I think it's important that, communication the other way. So if you guys are seeking to identify candidate pools, reaching down through either the educational system or the community partners that are engaged in their various areas, whether it's geography or a specific needs important, what advice would you give around soft skills if you think about partners coming together and collaborating around not only training programs, but helping around child care to help people have a place for their kids to go while they're at work? What are soft skills or other services that would be helpful or that are most needed by your either current or potential employees who would be seeking jobs with you? How can the community partners help through soft skills? What soft skills are most needed?
I'll go ahead and mention on that real quickly. So soft skills, as far as how the community can help, so I'm a mother of 4 children, all boys. Yes, Lord help me. And I have seen where, the need to help develop those soft skills, it needs to start in our high schools. It needs to start in our middle schools, even our elementary schools, which I can say, from a perspective of a mother, I have seen this last year, my youngest, my 6.5-year-old, he's already developing a soft skill of resiliency. He had to learn how to do kindergarten on a laptop on his own without a teacher right over him. My oldest, who was in his 2nd year of college, same thing, right? He had to develop a soft skill of resiliency. From an employer perspective, I can say resiliency and flexibility are the top two attributes that we are looking for in all of our candidates today. And when I say all of our candidates, I'm talking about from a director, a nursing director of our ICU, down to our EVS and our FNS and our nurse techs. So resiliency, flexibility, those are two attributes that really any individual nowadays needs. In our schools, we could really start in developing that today.
Yeah. And I would add to that compassionate and great service, great customer service skills. You know, we tie everything back to the patient. We deal with patients that come in our hospitals every single day, and I will guarantee none of them want to be there. So we look for those candidates that have that compassionate heart, that have those great customer skills, because whatever job that you're doing with HCA, it all comes back to the patient. So we can find those candidates and candidates that definitely have those skills already developed, like Mindy mentioned, early in their school years. But definitely by the time they graduate high school, I mean, that's a big plus, and that's a big a win for us.
Yeah. Regina, any other thoughts?
I definitely agree with, Oscar and Mindy around the resilience and the compassion. Their jobs, are like physically front facing. So, that's dealing with the public. And then for customer service, you're on the phone and you're solving someone's problem. So being resilient, a lot of people may have their own problems, but then they've got to get up and solve problems all day. So I think, what Mindy's saying is getting that resiliency piece. Also, probably 2/3 of our customer service jobs during the pandemic went remote, which, and they, didn't go back to on-site. So that is a different skill set, which is responsible and responsive, because no one is sitting there, asking you to do this or that. So that changes. It also opens up a wider variety of jobs that they can take in remote work. So I think supporting someone on how they can be independent, responsible, responsive, and compassionate. So I just, echo what they were saying as well.
So the last series of questions is really around the support and training that the employer, or you guys as employers, provide candidates as they engage with your organizations. And I know you've touched on a little bit of that already, but if Houston Back on Track is focused around engaging and getting people interested and prepared for an interview with each of you, what is the picture that you would want to paint for them on their opportunity from a career development standpoint moving forward? So what specifically kind of training and support are you providing applicants or candidates as they come through the door and engage with you as an employee, and how do they have the opportunity to grow once they're in the door?
And
so, go ahead, Oscar.
Oh, I'm sorry, Regina.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So specifically, we have two programs that we implemented. We designed, we created, we implemented, we rolled them out. Number one is targeting registered nurses. So one thing that we identified in our market years ago is that we have some major bachelor's degree nursing programs here in the Houston market. We had more nurses graduating than we had systems willing to take those untrained or inexperienced nurses. So what we did years ago is developed a training program that would put brand new graduate nurses through a 10 to 14 week program combining classroom instruction, simulation experience, and hands-on clinical training to better prepare that brand new graduate nurse to go directly into our facility and need very little preceptorship or additional training. So we started this years ago. So just to take you back to when we started to current, as of this year, we have placed more than 1,800 of these brand new graduate nurses into these training programs, and they will eventually transition and be able to provide patient care to everyone that walks into our hospitals. That's just one program. The other program that I alluded to earlier with a partnership with the ISD is taking a brand new high school graduate, and that high school graduate may not, for several reasons, not have the money to for education or to go to college. They may not be able to get a good job because they don't have experience. So what we decided is, let's open the doors to these. As long as they have those soft skills, let's bring them on. Let's put them through a 5-week program. And then after those 5 weeks, they graduate and they're able to transition to our facilities as PCTs or patient care techs and be eligible to receive their certified nurse assistant certification from the state of Texas. We even pay for the scrubs. We give them a sign-on bonus. We pay for the training. So it's a win-win for them. But we identified this years ago because there were many in our community that graduated and had nowhere to go.
Mm-hmm. Anything to add, Regina?
We have a kind of a unique position in that we're a partner with employers.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the largest employers in Houston we're fortunate to work with. So they're providing on-the-job training. But what we do is we also partner with the coaching. So we actually have offsite coaches that coach people around their skills. And we have a program where we meet with them 3, 6, 9 months and a year to make sure that they're on track to move. Can they move up in that client? Can we move them somewhere else? Is their resume ready to go? So to provide a longer term look than we're just answering the phone, but we're answering the phone on the way to another opportunity.
Yeah, and I think as we move forward through this initial design phase, we'll be looking for your feedback as well as the community partners begin coaching candidates or interested applicants as they come through and making sure they have the right, set of skills, expectations, and that we're putting the right other community partners alongside of them as it relates to soft skills. So yeah, we're looking forward to your feedback there. So thank you very much. Any final comments or other thoughts that you'd like to share, just unscripted?
I think it's a great program.
It is such a great program, and we're just so excited to even be here to participate in this event today. One thing, again, I really, we're talking about the education of employees coming in, and us as organizations, the education that we're providing to teach them. I think that we need to do a lot of educating with employers as well. I think that we need to educate them on the fact that the ideal candidate who checks off every single box of your job description, they're not necessarily out there right now. So for them to be able to take a stance back, identify the skill sets that are on that job description that actually are a requirement that they have, and then the ones that aren't necessarily a requirement that they can train these individuals on. So I think that the more that we can educate employers to really take a stand back and really assess what they're asking and requiring from candidates, that's definitely going to shorten that gap of unemployment out there. So I think the more that we can have events such as this to educate our employers, the better off we're going to be in this Houston area for sure.
Great, thank you very much. I mean, this is a partnership all the way around from everybody that's involved. The more that we can get the word out and get people connected and people kind of providing the right sets of services around people looking, the better. So I really appreciate your comments. Regina, Mindy, Oscar, thank you so much for your time today. I thank both of your respective organizations for being a partner in what we're doing and look forward to much more good work here. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We knew right away that participating in UpSkill Houston was the right thing for Baker Ripley. Our focus is to help our neighbors earn, learn, and belong. And through UpSkill Houston, we were able to connect with employers and really understand the human capital needs of those employers. And that allowed us to prepare our neighbors so that they could find an entry point into these industries and into these better paying jobs. So the conversations we have at the UpSkill Houston table between employers, higher education, K through 12, and community organizations has been very valuable to us as we roll out our strategies and our programs to help people earn a better living. My name is Renee Solis, Chief Program Officer at Baker Ripley. What are you up for?
Okay, we are back, and thanks for sticking with us. As we move from healthcare, we have two other guests from Silver Eagle and Mustang Cat. So we'll look at some different sectors and get their perspective. But let me first introduce Stacey Atchison, and she's the Vice President for Human Resources for Silver Eagle Distributors in Houston. Many of you probably know Silver Eagle is one of the leading beverage distributors in the Houston area, and serving customers and communities where they live. And Dave Edwards has joined the screen as well. And Dave is the Director for Human Resources for Mustang Cat, which is the Gulf Coast's Caterpillar dealership, providing construction and power systems equipment, building Texas and empowering the world. And a lot of activity, honestly, in both these organizations through the pandemic. So without further ado, I'd love to just get started, and maybe Stacey, we'll start with you. But like we did in the last, give everyone a little bit of context about your being employee base in the Greater Houston area.
Yeah, good morning. I'm Stacey Atchison, and Silver Eagle distributes beverages, mostly Anheuser-Busch beverages, also water and energy drinks that are in the health and beauty areas in many of our store locations. And we are throughout the Houston area. We have 5 branch locations, and we have about 1,200 employees.
Great. I didn't know there were beauty drinks. I'll have to.
It's energy drinks. Yeah, energy drinks. Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah.
Dave, tell us a little bit about Mustang Cat and the employee base here in the area.
Sure. Mustang Cat is the Caterpillar dealership here in Southeast Texas. Our footprint is a 35 county area here in the Gulf Coast region, and we have about 820 or so employees, about 20 or so locations throughout that territory.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you all for joining with us, and really even in partnering with us. I know your feedback is hopefully helpful for your organizations, but a lot of carryover effects. We're seeing a lot of the jobs that you're recruiting for, others are recruiting for as well, and so a lot of lessons learned here. But for the group here today, maybe Stacey, we'll start with you. But tell us about some of the challenges that you're currently facing as you recruit talent, and kind of how that was pre and maybe post pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. So pre-pandemic, we really did not have an issue with our applicant pool. We had plenty applicants to fill our roles, and we focused really on Indeed as our recruiting mechanism. And post-pandemic, we found we had many of our entry-level roles. We're always recruiting for merchandisers, warehouse employees, and entry-level route assistants is what we call them. Then we train them in-house to become CDL drivers. So we're always recruiting for those roles. So we've had to get really creative post-pandemic, and had to really broaden our advertising of the roles. We're using Indeed and specializing jobs. We're using targeted advertisement through our HRIS system that sends jobs out to many different sites. We've had a couple of wage increases. We have active referrals going on. We have sign-on bonus for entry-level roles. So we've just really had to get creative and kind of attack it from many different avenues post-pandemic in order to get the candidate pools where we need them.
Yeah, and Stacey, tell us a little bit about what kind of candidates you're looking for. What are the hiring needs right now?
Yeah, so we're always hiring for merchandisers, which they are, in our mainly grocery store locations, and stocking the shelves, front facing, just making sure that product is available. It's really an entry-level job with a lot of upside potential. You can move into a sales specialist. So we're constantly hiring for merchandisers, and through October, we have a sign-on bonus going on for the merchandisers we hire, as well as a referral bonus going on for our employees that refer those great candidates. We're always looking for, we call them route assistants. That's how they're hired on, and they ride on a truck and help our drivers in the delivery process. And after anywhere from a month to 6 weeks, they go through an in-house CDL training program. So we're a little bit unique in that we do that training in-house. And after about a month of classroom training and then driving with a driver trainer, they become certified to get their CDL. So we're always recruiting for those roles, as well as our warehouse roles. We've changed a little bit our warehouse roles. Last year, we began like a temp to hire just to make sure we're getting the right fit. It's a pretty unique job. It's very fast paced. There are, pick rates that have to be met. So we found that kind of gives the candidate the ability to see, like, is this really for me, as well as us as the company to determine if it's a match. And then we convert them from temp to hire.
Okay, that's great.
Lots all of those just require a high school diploma or GED.
Okay. Yeah, lots of follow-up, but let's, Dave, what about you? A little bit about hire needs pre-pandemic and where you are now and what types of people you're looking for.
Sure. Well, prior to the pandemic, we still had a major shortage. There's been an ongoing 50% of our workforce is service technicians, and that's been an ongoing field where there's been a labor shortage of skilled technicians. And this has been a problem going back for years. I've been here 24 years, and it's been a problem that we were talking about in the early 2000s, so that has always been an issue for us. And of course, COVID made everything worse. But the kind of two major headwinds I feel like that we really face with recruiting, despite the name recognition that we get with Caterpillar and everything else. The first, I would say, is just a shortage, as was mentioned already, a shortage of individuals that have the skills that we need to service our equipment. There's a lot of contributing factors to this issue, the aging workforce, educational trends over the last 30 years, parental influences, to name a few, and that's a much larger discussion. But I'd say that the other major headwind that we've faced is just kind of simply an image problem, with our industry, because of our association with the construction industry and great need for technicians. A lot of times people tend to associate our careers with sort of low tech or sort of dirty job, kind of image that only high school dropouts would want to do or something like that. They don't understand the technology involved with these machines and everything else, and the career potential and the earning potential that we have in this field. And so we have to work really hard to overcome that image problem and educate people, and especially parents, about the amazing technology in our products. And this is a really challenging and rewarding career. And so those are some of the kind of the big challenges that we face, in this market. And as far as the pandemic, it already took an already existing problem in insufficient applicant pool and just shrunk it that much more. Let's face it, this is a job where you have to show up to work every day in person for the most part. And so if you have people that have any sort of fear of, exposure to COVID-19 or whatever, they may not be eager to jump into that kind of context. We're very much in person and majority of our opportunities that we have here. And so, that's probably another contributing factor to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe, for both of you, but Stacy, you mentioned, CDL license and maybe on-site training. I think we probably all, if you turn on the radio, you're getting advertisements for drivers. Obviously that problem is not specific to you all, but tell us a little bit of maybe, let's take that job. We look at longevity. How do you feel about placing people in that job and training people for that skill set? And I'd love to hear also a little bit more about, how much experience people need, how much on the job training you provide, and how that's maybe changed your recruiting tools and determining qualifications.
Yeah, it's really, I was talking to a couple of driver trainers yesterday, and they said, like, look, we had a 21-year-old that we were training on the CDL truck. So, we have a great driver trainer program, and they really kind of gauge through the training. And we have, a number of people that sign off that driver is ready. And it can be a 4-week program, depending, like if somebody comes in with some experience, or we do have some that come in with the CDL, and then we just kind of make sure we put them through a short training to make sure they are qualified to drive our vehicles. And then we have some that, you know, it may be 4 to 6 weeks, or they need a longer period. So our driver trainers assess that, and there's an in-depth sign-off process to make sure that driver is ready to go out on the truck. But really, I mean, they can come in, you know, they just have to pass the, you know, the requirements for that CDL and that, you know, that PHMSA, that there's requirements that they must pass in the background process. But really, as far as experience for that, they don't have to. And then, you know, they develop a skill, a certification and skill and a license that they have through that. So it's a really great, you know, entry level to skilled, very in demand role. And then, you know, our challenge becomes, you know, keeping them and growing their career. So they stay with Silver Eagle, and we continue utilizing that CDL that they've obtained.
Yeah, that's great. Dave, what about you on the service technicians? What on the job training? What's kind of the minimum requirements you will take on before you can kind of, you know, get them through additional training kind of on site?
Sure. So, well, obviously, if you talk to our service managers, they want people who have, you know, they're 25 years old, but have 20 years of experience working on equipment or whatever. But you know, really what we look for in more entry level, you know, positions for technicians, people, obviously you have to have a, you know, a basic, you know, mechanical aptitude, technical aptitude, and those kinds of things. But really, if we find people that, you know, have a comfort level with using tools, but to have, you know, just an attitude and a good attitude and a willingness to learn, that really goes a long way. You know, and we, you know, we do a lot of training. We partner with a lot of local high schools with the auto tech programs to allow their students to intern their senior year of high school. They get early release and come and they work here in the afternoon. And then the goal with that is hopefully then transition them into, we also have a 2-year associate's degree program where we sponsor students. It's at Oklahoma State University Institute of Technology in Okmulgee, Oklahoma. It's a Caterpillar specific program. We call it the Think Big program or the Cat Dealer Prep program. But we give them a scholarship. They get to do a series of 5 paid internships throughout the course of the 2 years while they work on their degree. So they go to school for 8 weeks and they come back and apply what they learned, you know, for 8 weeks, you know, on an internship. And so they go back and forth throughout the course of the 2 years with the goal, of course, of hiring them, you know, when they graduate. And we provide tool support for them. You know, for the high school kids, we actually help. We pay 2/3 of the cost for a toolbox. That's a big area, you know, a barrier of entry for some of these kids that don't have a lot of money or whatever, you know, and helping them with the tools and those kinds of things. And so, so those are a lot of things that we're doing, you know, with more entry level, on the entry level side with technicians. We also try to hire from the military, a lot of, you know, technicians and stuff exiting the military. And a lot of times, you know, they have basic skills, but there's still a lot of training needs to be there. And, you know, we have an internal training department also that we have beefed up our sort of entry level, you know, technician training and stuff that we even do in-house to try to support, you know, some of these programs and stuff that we're hiring from as well. So.
No. And maybe for either of you, as you think about career pathways, I think we just came for the panel on the medical field, which is probably a little bit more defined in kind of career pathways. But as people are coming in for these jobs and they, you know, they're looking for, you know, kind of long-term career and how do they grow? How do you communicate to them about, you know, kind of jobs in this area and where their career can go for their life once they have these skills?
I can jump in. So we've created some career progression, just, you know, a short 3 to 4 page PowerPoint on like some of our employees. We're really fortunate, about 60% of our 12 of our senior leadership team they started in those entry level roles and have worked their way up. So many of our managers, supervisor roles, our sales specialist roles, they started in those entry level roles and worked their way up. So we've kind of created these just career progressions on, you know, here's Marty. Marty started as a merchandiser, and, you know, here was Marty's career path. And, you know, we really try and focus on, you know, some of our people have taken a lateral move and maybe gone from the sales department to a warehouse role to just broaden their experience level, just to make them that much more valuable of an employee. So we really try and focus on that as well. And we go through those during the orientation and onboarding process, just to kind of give that vision of, you know, here's somebody that started exactly where you did, and, you know, here's where they are now. So here's the potential. And that just seemed to kind of be the most relevant way for us to demonstrate that.
Yeah.
I see there's a question too in the about if we use staffing agencies for the temp to hire, and we do work with a couple of specific staffing agencies on that.
Yeah, thanks. Dave, what about you? A little bit growth pathways, career progression.
Yeah, I think one of the really great things about Mustang, and I think one of the things that's a real selling point for us with candidates and stuff, is that there really is a lot of true career potential here. And we always look first within our organization to promote good employees before we look outside the organization. And I would say on average, we probably fill over 50% of our jobs, you know, that, you know, they don't require, you know, new employees, you know, internally. And if you look, you know, across our organization, you know, literally we have dozens and dozens of employees that at every level of our organization that started off, you know, in more of an entry level role, that have worked their way up to higher levels of the organization. But just to kind of give a couple of examples from career progression standpoint, like for technicians, we have 6 different levels of technician. And there's a clear pathway that's defined in terms of the skills and the education you need to move from like a level 1 to a level 2 to a level 3. They can develop their skills and move up in responsibility and pay. They can also move laterally into different areas of focus, like, you know, large equipment, small equipment, industrial engines, electronics, hydraulics. They can specialize. We also have opportunities both in the shop as well as field service technicians, where they actually go out to customer job sites and do repairs out in the field, and you know, opportunity to grow that way. And then those technical skills that they learn as a technician really can prepare you to do almost anything at a Caterpillar dealership. So they can move into other opportunities like technical sales or training or rental or supervision, just to name a few. And then like on the parts side, you know, the warehouse is certainly a big entry level or entry point, you know, for us. And those that excel in filling orders in the warehouse, they can become parts coordinators or shipping and receiving clerks. They can go into parts sales and even, you know, run our part, you know, be a kind of supervisor and run one of our parts stores. And then finally, for college graduates, we have a developmental sales and management program where we take new grads and we assign them to a specific job, whether it's in the service department, parts department, rental, sales, or some of the admin departments. And then while they're working in that job, we rotate them through all the different areas of the company so that they get exposure to the different things that we do, different business units, different business areas. We also provide leadership training and coaching, project assignments, in those types of things throughout the course of their time in the program. And it's been a tremendous success for us. In the 3 years since we kind of really revamped the program, we've had about 72 people that have gone through the program, and we've promoted or placed 77% of them into permanent roles within the organization. And many of them are managers of the company within 3 years' time. They move into, you know, a management role with the company. And the average time in this program is about 8 months before they roll out into a more permanent assignment role. So those are just kind of 3 examples, but there's a lot of different opportunities to grow and promote from within here.
That's great. I know we're short on time, but I'd be remiss, given some of the data that, you know, Louise went over on just the diversity of Houston and inclusiveness, which you know, people are looking for jobs right now, but maybe speak a little bit to what you're doing on, you know, kind of the hiring for the diversity and inclusive workforce, and, you know, why that's important to the organization.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's really important that, you know, our folks working in the stores and the areas and where we're selling and distributing our product, that we are aligned with the communities from a diversity aspect. And so we really focus on that from, just our applicant pools, making sure we have diverse candidates, which we've been very fortunate. You just with our makeup and our hiring that, we do kind of represent the community from that, but we really keep a focus on that from, where are we advertising? Where are we targeting? Where are we spending our community funds? So that's always something that's at the forefront for us. And kind of in line with that, we've also found that we are a military-friendly employer, recognizing that we found that military transition is a great transition for us as well. So we focus on that as well.
Good. Dave, what about Mustang Cat?
Yeah, some similarities there. Fortunately for us, kind of two of our largest target groups for candidates are high school students in the military, which are pretty, have pretty good diversity within them. And we've also really expanded our online efforts, so social media and online recruiting efforts, and tried to target areas where we know we have diverse populations that we can target, with career interest. And then one of the areas where we've had some really great success in the last couple of years, going back to our management sales development program, we've actually been really hired some really great female candidates in there, which, this is a traditionally very male dominated workforce and industry in general. And some of, I would say a lot of the really high performing people that we put in that program have actually been females that we promoted out into management roles throughout the organization. And that's really been a breath of fresh air for a company like Mustang to have, a more diverse, just from a gender perspective, in our workforce, and attracting females into this industry has been a push for it that we've tried to make in the last few years. And that's been really beneficial to us to bring in females into more management roles. And it really kind of trickles down in our hiring process into other opportunities and positions, even female technicians and those kinds of things. So
that's great. Well, hey, there's tons of other questions we could probably dive into, but short on time. But I do want to thank both of you just for your leadership, not only for your individual organizations, but your relationship with the partnership and UpSkill Houston, and the commitment you have just to the city. So thanks for your time today. And I know everybody appreciated the perspective. So appreciate the time.
Participation in UpSkill Houston has helped San Jacinto College look at how we're designing our programs and how we're really meeting the workforce needs. As we were designing programs, especially for petrochemical, we were at the table with different leaders, and so we're listening to what they need, and then we're able to respond and make changes. I've benefited personally by participating in UpSkill Houston because it's built relationships. This whole business is about relationships and being able to respond, and I've been able to meet people who really care and know what's needed in the workforce of Houston. We can't do this work alone. It goes across all sectors, and that's what UpSkill Houston has helped us work on. I'm Brenda Hellier, Chancellor, San Jacinto College. What are you up for?
So as we move into the final section of our meeting, we're running short on time, so we'll cut the Q&A a bit short here. But we have had a number of questions already online about wraparound and support services. And the way that I would respond to that is that we do have a number of community partners that are engaged with us already, who do, and our intention here, at least with the partners that are engaged now, is to be with those, I'll call clients, for the longer term, whether it's through engagement on coaching or the services that they do provide. So we do intend to stick with clients or people looking for opportunities kind of through the life cycle of the process of getting them in front of employers and beyond. But we do welcome, this is a collaborative effort. So we are looking for ways to broaden that reach. If there are other services we need to pull into what we're doing here, and that's feedback coming from the employer groups and also community groups. As I mentioned before, we're seeing childcare as a #1 need for the community service organization that I'm involved with out in the neighborhood. So if there are others and other partners we need to pull into this, we're looking for your feedback. So I encourage additional feedback from you guys online directly to Peter and his organization. Go to the website, send us feedback that way, but we'd love to continue this dialogue after this meeting today. But we're looking for your feedback. Yeah. And so again, to summarize a few points, this is really about three things. We've talked a lot about connectivity, but it's also around the support mechanism, either through coaching to help people not only reveal opportunities that are available, but to help people along the pathway to get in front of an employer prepared for the interview and to be qualified for that interview. It's also about, we mentioned this is a short-term effort, but that we're hoping that this really has long-term implications for our city. Making those connections now that will persist and continue the collaboration at all levels, from community to education partners to employees, and making those connections. And then third, this is, again, a community effort. So it takes all of us to make this happen. We like to get the word out. We'd like to engage other partners to help engage the community in need.
Yeah, Chase, I think that's well said. I think, as again, all of you realized before today, that this is, as you pull back the layers of the onion, there's many issues that need to be addressed, right? And so you talked about wraparound services of getting the LinkedIn profile and some of the pieces we have on the, aging workforce and childcare and, all these types of issues we realize we need to, speak into. And again, the hundreds of thousands of people that we're trying to meet means that we need to have everybody included. And I think what we also want to make sure that we're continuing to learn from each other is on how employers should be changing those requests and job postings to recruit the right incentive and to make sure that the training is there. But again, we appreciate the response we've had thus far. And again, what has been apparent is that we have a lot of support in Houston. And so again, goes back to the notion, just if we can, connect the dots, and a lot of that we'll try to do through the website and through using technology as much as we can, but also realizing that we have a large part of the workforce that's not actively engaged in technology, that's sitting in the communities. And so working with those community organizations to make sure we're reaching out physically and letting them know that there's opportunities available and how they can attach those opportunities is crucial. And so again, appreciate you all joining today and the opportunity to really be collaborative in this effort to move Houston forward. So.
Yeah. So in closing, thank you, Matt and Chase, for leading us, for your commitment to this effort. Thank you to all the employers today for being our guinea pigs and piloting and testing with us over the past several months as we've designed this. And thank you to our sponsors and our participants. And with that, we'll close the session. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you all.